All righty, boys and girls, welcome back to yet another episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show with your host, myself, Alex, and the foxiest man that I know, Christopher Condit, your American villain voices. And as always, we will be slinging the lukewarmiest of lukewarm opinions. Please go follow us on all social platforms, on Spotify, on Apple Music, on Amazon, on YouTube, because once again, and it is now confirmed, we have a big interview coming on Tuesday. Again, we're still not going to say who it is. All I'll say, as maybe some of you have seen me post in some of the Villa fan groups on Facebook, it is a name that everybody is going to recognize. I think it's a name that everybody is going to be interested to hear from, particularly now. Someone very, very high up previously at Aston Villa. And I think we've got some really good questions to ask him and, well, I guess both of our guests, actually, to get a really good perspective of Aston Villa and Birmingham. So please follow, tune in. That'll be coming out probably at some point on Wednesday, and you're really not going to want to miss it. So definitely stay tuned to your feeds.
The most amazing part is that we landed them at all, but here we are. Here we are with two very high-profile guests.
Hey, you know what? We are very charismatic men, Chris. We are devoted fans, and that just came through. And who wouldn't want to talk to us? Everybody, come on.
Fair point.
Yeah. But Chris, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. 3 points at 3 points, and I wasn't thrilled with the way we played, but I'll take the win every single day of the week. And it's been a nice weekend here in North Carolina, cold but nice. And we took down our Christmas decorations today. So, that's what I've been doing. How about you, Alex? How are you?
I can't believe Bridget took down Christmas decorations before we did. She out Christmased Katie, and I'm pretty impressed by that.
It's unusual that we're this early, but it was time. It was time to move them down.
To be fair, we would have taken them down this weekend as well, but we ordered a ornament holder from Amazon because we got a bunch of new ornaments this year, and it was supposed to come last Tuesday, and it got delayed, and now it's not coming till Thursday.
Are you real tree or fake tree?
We are a real tree.
So are we. Yeah, so are we.
Yeah, I like the smell.
So do I.
It's not even my holiday, but if I'm going to participate,
it can be anybody's holiday. I don't care. Gentile, Jew, whoever, it doesn't matter. Come on in.
Good. I'm very tired. I think I slept 4.5 hours last night because everything from regular work to this work to our interview on Tuesday was kind of rolling through my head. But 2 nights ago, and this is how much I think about this damn podcast, by the way. So 2 nights ago, I had a dream, a podcast themed dream. First one I've ever had. Yeah. So check this out. So we were going through our lineups for whatever upcoming match was in my head. And I knew that Pau Torres was injured. So I was saying who was going to play left center back for us. And for whatever reason, I said that our back four was going to be Matty Cash, Ezri Konsa, Luka Dean, and Jake O'Brien. And the look, forget the fact that Jake O'Brien plays for West Ham and the fact that he's a right center back. But I will forever remember the look that you gave me across the screen where you're like, I think Tyrone Mings is going to start. The shame that I felt. That's how much I care about this and getting this right. I felt so much shame. I still feel shameful that I even dreamt that Jake O'Brien would start at left center back for us instead of Tyrone Mings.
In reality, I would have been furiously Googling to see if I missed something where we had suddenly signed Jake O'Brien and I didn't know it. But your dream is forgiven. I don't feel ashamed. It's okay. You're all right.
Yeah. Well, speaking of left center backs, I think we're going to be spending a lot of time on that today when we talk about Leicester. So let's dive right into it. Villa's lineup. Neither you or I got it right, actually, for the first time. And Unai Emery threw us both a curveball and brought in Ross Barkley. Although, actually, I didn't hate it. I actually thought it was a decent move.
I thought it was too, and it ended up working out pretty nicely. I liked what Barkley brought to the table, and I thought that overall that move worked. It was not anywhere in the cards for me. I didn't think that was going to be the change that was made, but I'm pleased that he did. And Barkley this season for me continues to impress, and he's been an absolute bargain in terms of what he was brought in for. He's done exactly what we need as a team and more so far this season, and that continued yesterday against Leicester.
Yeah, I think Dan Bardell put it really well on Twitter earlier today, so I will give him credit for this, where he essentially said Barkley came in for virtually no money. He plays the role exactly that we need. We needed depth, especially around the midfield. And he's going to come in, do a job. Is he the best player? Is he going to necessarily push for a starting week in, week out spot? No. But he's also okay with that. He understands what his role is supposed to be on this team. And to have a senior head that can do that, come in and obviously pop up with a couple goals like he has this year, we probably don't give him the credit for turning the tide in as many games as he has or stabilizing the games that he has. I can think of at least like 3-4 off the top of my head for a guy with minimal minutes. That's pretty good. And that's good value for what we brought him in for.
And I mean, I know we haven't gotten to this phase of the game yet, but that touch and finish to get the goal was great. I mean, it was legitimately a great first touch to collect the ball. And when you talked about being a senior player, an experienced player, he knew exactly how much space he had and time he had to set the shot and really make a nice finish on that to put it in the bottom left corner or bottom right corner from the goalie's perspective. But yeah, it was great. Perfect.
Yeah. And also we're going to get into the segments right now anyway, right? Like Villa were stagnant for a lot of this match offensively, did not create much. I don't know when our first shot on target actually was. Might have even been the goal for all I remember.
No, they had one previous.
All right. Yeah. One previous, whatever it was, one shot on target until we
scored. Like 45 plus 2. Yeah.
Yes. And yet it was Ross Barkley. I can remember at least like 3 times where he kind of pulled the vintage Ross Barkley out of his bag, driving out of midfield, was able to beat 3 or 4 guys and actually create a little bit of chaos driving into the box. That it was almost like those runs that he made were probably half of the good opportunities that we got where we actually looked like we might create something. Yeah. So his ability to bring something a little different to drive out of midfield the way he does it and kind of pick his spots, I think was really useful for us. But let's dive into the match before we get to any of that. And first, let's say 15, 16 minutes until the McGinn injury, snooze. We got a good attempt in the 13th minute where Leon Bailey slipped but was able to play it to Yori. Cash plays the low cross and ultimately Ollie's shot gets blocked. But other than that, there really wasn't much going either way. The only major talking point is that now we are down yet another player.
So McGinn, 2 to 5 weeks is what Unai Emery came out and said in his post-game presser. That's not good, and it's a hamstring, which is always tricky given the amount of running that these players have to do on a every week, 2 times, 3 times a week basis. That's a tough blow, even though you and I have been saying for a few weeks now that the best 11 doesn't include John McGinn, but that doesn't mean I don't want him at all.
18.
It's like that's a totally different ball of wax there. So unfortunately, we're going to see what a starting 11 looks like now without McGinn, but not in the circumstances that we were hoping for. And that, it's a big blow, not just for what he does on the field, but like we've talked about over and over and over again, for what he does off it and in the dressing room. And he's always kind of been that binding force for years now. It's not just recently. It's been throughout several managers, pretty much since the time he's been here. He's been a guy that kind of seems to relate to everybody in the dressing room.
Everyone except John Duran last year, I suppose.
Well,
can I just take a pause though? Did you just say that's a whole different bowl of wax? Is that a phrase?
Ball of wax. Ball of wax.
Ball of wax. Oh, I thought you said bowl of wax.
If I said bowl, I was mistaken. No, it's ball of wax. That's an old person expression.
But, hey, we are still the same generation. We've been over this before.
Spiritually, we're not though.
It- Spiritually, you're like the silent generation. We're gonna skip boomers. We're gonna skip the greatest generation. You're like the silent generation.
Yes,
Um,
I agree.
but anyway, let's. I don't even know how to transition back to the match from there. But the rest of the first half, I think it was actually epitomized pretty well by what Van Nistelrooy said in the lead up to the match, which was that their objective was going to be to frustrate Villa and to sit back and defend. We said going into this that being on the road, bless you,
Sorry.
that being on the road, they were probably going to sit back a little bit more, but I don't think that we expected them to be as organized, as compact as they were. It seemed like every time we got the ball, they had all 11 guys behind it within 30, 35 yards of their goal. And there really wasn't much that we could do with it other than look pretty dangerous from a couple short corners and ability to play it in. Ultimately, it didn't really work, but it seemed like we were really targeting that back post, and that was really where our best opportunities were coming from.
Yeah, and the only frustration I had from the first half, beyond the fact that you have to give credit to Leicester for their organization and setup, they really played well. I mean, to me, it was clear. You kind of alluded to it already that they were playing, if not for a draw, they were going to be very, very careful and specific about when they tried to make their chance. And so the first half was kind of honestly a snooze fest for the bulk of it. There wasn't a whole lot in it because they weren't conceding opportunities, nor were they really trying to break on the counter all that much. They were being extremely strategic about it. But the frustrating thing to me was that I felt like what Villa what Villa needed was a big switch from one side to the other because the pitch had become very lopsided to the right-hand side because everything was coming down the right. And I understand why they were targeting that side because that was a weak point for Leicester's defense. But when the whole field pitch shifts to that right side, you need to bring something along to move the defense the other way because otherwise everybody's just going to be able to sit in that low block the way they were and nothing's good, or it's going to be extremely difficult to penetrate. You've got to get guys moving. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to create those channels that we want to see. So I thought that we needed to see a little more coming to the left, especially since Luka Dean is such a good weapon in attack for us there. I was frustrated by that. But otherwise, I give all credit in the world to Leicester for the way they set up.
And I just want to put a finer point on one thing that you said there, like Villa identifying a weak point. So that was you're referring to Leicester's left back, who was making, I believe, his second start of the season, something like that, in for injury, very young. I want to say he was like 18, 20 years old. And the idea was let's get Leon Bailey isolated one-on-one against this guy and let him go at him. He was coming off of one of the most involved offensive performances in recent Premier League history, let alone Villa history against Brighton. And so it was like, let's build on that. What I want to give Leicester credit for, though, is they covered that left back really well. Mavididi, obviously very offensive player, was always tracking back really quick. The center midfielder was always coming over. And so what happened was very rarely did Leon Bailey actually get isolated one-on-one against him with actually like room to dribble. There was like a long cross that he chested down, but like the guy was already on him. There was the 32nd minute when Matty Cash won that hospital ball and made the run and then Leon Bailey gets the good low cross in. That was like the one opportunity in the first half where we really got him isolated. Often he was 1-against-2, 1-against-3 defenders, and so he needed to cycle it back out. And so that, to your point, is why we needed to try something to the left-hand side. And so I won't even jump ahead to bad points. Listen, I'm not going to say that Mings was awful, should never touch the pitch again, the way that some people do every time that Carlos plays or even Power Matty Cash at this point. But like Mings in this offensive system is an offensive liability. He is. And so I tallied it up, and ultimately I wound up losing count at 11. There was 11 different times that Mings got the ball under, I won't even say pressure, but some semblance of a guy near him, where he could have opened up and played Luka Dean either through, wider left, all that kind of stuff. And every single time he turned back into pressure. He put Emi Martinez under pressure very early in the game, who had to kick it out for a throw in. He put Ezri Konsa under pressure a couple different times, the midfielders. He was either incapable or unwilling to open up his body and actually use the width on the field there and use Luka Dean for what he's good for.
Yep.
And if you're not going to make that play, which is so crucial to how we want to attack, that's how we want to use our left back to create that width, to then cycle it back around or get the cross in or play those 1-2s with Ramsey, like, then we have nowhere to attack through. So if Pau's going to be out for 8+ weeks, we either need to find a tactical wrinkle to play differently and play to Mings' strengths with maybe some of the longer balls that he can do, some of the switches, some of the through balls. Because when he did in the 37th minute, he had a great through ball to Jacob Ramsey that actually created an opportunity. But he either needs to open up or like we need to get something else going, because it stunted so many attacks when he just wouldn't actually open up and play that ball to the left. And it was so frustrating to watch.
It was. Now, I will say on the positive side, he and Ezri Konsa won every single one of their aerial and ground duels. Credit ABFC Stato for that.
I guess it's not really a ground duel, but what about when Mings slipped in the second half and gave Leicester that really good opportunity that Mavididi blasted way wide right?
Not a ground duel, just a classic Mings mistake.
Every game gives him an opportunity. We're lucky who it fell to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do, like, I was as frustrated as you were by that, because like I said, I felt like the whole pitch was tilted to the right. Like it was almost like it was on an incline, because everybody was moving that way. So you switch it up to create channels. Like you just have to create more options. Eventually, constantly doing one thing is going to get a defensive system set in such a way that a big switch could open up an opportunity. I'm not saying they had to constantly go down the left, but you had to do it more than they did. It was wide open and ready for the taking.
And it was how we got one of our goals.
Yep.
But it did seem like the few times that Mings did play to Dean, we actually got opportunities out of it. Luka Dean got crosses, we got corners, we were actually able to move forward. So like, we're not just saying this just to slate Mings or because we're, presidents of the Pau Torres fan club.
I thought Mings played well outside of that.
He did fine. I thought he did really well defensively, but mistake that should have cost us a goal. And the stunting of the offensive system. I guess the reason why I bring this up is I talk about this idea of narrative a lot. And there's this narrative, because of what he means to all of us, that Mings, McGinn to an extent, is this kind of like infallible savior that always needs to be part of the Aston Villa system, and nobody is better than these players.
Right.
And it's just not true. Now, everybody gets better. Every fan's favorite player is the guy that's unavailable, right? So you're going to see everybody start bigging up Pau Torres, and then he's going to come back, and you're going to see the same, issues that you saw before about people targeting him for strength or, some of his limitations as well. So like, I'm sure the pendulum is going to swing the other way. But so what we're really doing here, I think, is just pouring a little bit of cold water on this idea that Mings is going to come in and is like a 100% guaranteed starter when fit, no matter what.
Yeah.
There are flaws to his game as well that we're going to need to game plan around, and we're just kind of doing our job as Villa analysts by calling them out, I suppose.
I mean, I was referring to Luka Dean in our text as le roi à gauche, because I am obsessed with him now, and I just felt like he was underutilized. And that, boys and girls,
that for the listeners,
the king on the left en français, the king on the left. So like maybe my analyst hat was not on yesterday when we were going through it. But I just feel like that is a flaw, and but what he makes up for is his strength in the box and all those things. You feel much more confident, on set pieces and corners because he's in there. So
Absolutely.
I will couch the bad with the good there.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%. All right, so let's dispense with this quickly because I think you and I are going to have a similar take on it. 45 plus 2, penalty or no?
No. It was, I think, especially because it's going away from goal, that it's not a penalty, but it was such a slight touch. I didn't see it as a pen, and even on replay, I didn't think it was particularly close. I think if there's more contact, you have a discussion. Like I think you have a real shout if there's more contact there, even going away from goal. But going away from goal, I mean, it was such a slight touch that would that have been called a foul in open play? I don't think so. So that therefore no penalty for me.
Yeah, agreed. I think he was kind of off balance
Yeah,
anyway. You probably need to get a little bit more contact on him for it to be called in the first place, or for VAR to send him to the screen. So
yeah.
I'm fine with it. But let's move ahead to the second half then. Game really opens up, starts to get end to end a lot more. Um, and what do you know? It's Mings finding Luka Dean that ultimately leads to our goal. Finds Luka Dean, we get a deflection that turns into the corner that we play into the box for the first time, if I can recall. I think all the other ones were short and ultimately crossed in, but we go direct into the box.
Yep.
There's a rebound around, and as you rightly said earlier, beautiful touch and finish from Ross Barkley to get us our first.
I mean, all credit to Barkley on that goal, despite everything else that led to it. Just the ability to bring that ball down so nicely, and the absolute perfect finish to send the ball into the lower corner in a crowded box. It was top notch, 10 out of 10 in terms of the finish. And like I said, the bigger thing for me was the first touch. Like that's where a player of experience and ability really shines through, because he knew when that ball came to him exactly what he was going to do with it, and he executed it to a T.
I have nothing to add. That's, yeah, spot on. So a few minutes later, actually, I just want to give a shout out to Vestergaard. I thought he was really good yesterday, and him going off injured was a huge benefit to us because it seemed like he was breaking up and blocking nearly everything. So it sucks for him to get injured, but I think it was a boon to Aston Villa over the
Yep.
next 30 minutes. But it was not in the 63rd. So, Chris, let's have another conversation about our striker who has not scored from open play since November.
Yeah, that was a really poor ball. If you didn't know any better, you would think that he was laying that ball off for Ollie Watkins, was laying that ball off for Jordan Ayew. And they never played together at Aston Villa, so I know he wasn't confused as to who he was looking for. But
Ayew was really good yesterday, by the way. He created a lot.
he played well. He played
Yeah,
well.
played really well.
It was such a poor ball, and it put the defense in a terrible spot, because once again, the frustrating thing for me about that concession was that was totally against the run of play, out of nowhere. And instead of going from a position where we could add and go up 2-0, maybe put the game away, we are in a totally different set of circumstances now, and it was completely avoidable, and it was just a really bad mistake. And I know some folks were like coming down on Matt Cash for not tracking back and covering that rebound better, but like, come on, man, nothing happens if there's just a half decent pass back instead of whatever that was that really it was right in line for Ayew just to run and scoop it up and start running on goal. It was a beauty of an assist if it had gone in, from Ollie Watkins.
I mean, I think unnecessary is the perfect word for this.
Yeah.
Ollie Watkins is so good typically at his hold up play. He wasn't under that much pressure. hold on to the ball, take the foul, take a second to make the better pass back. Instead, to your point, he lays it off to Ayu, who's got so much space to run and get that cross in. Mings is never getting there. And should Kansa maybe get in front of Vardy so he doesn't get that first shot off? Maybe. Could Matt Cash get back a little quicker to cover Mavididi? Maybe, but both those guys are heads forward, like thinking how they're going to attack. It was an easy ball. There's nothing going through their minds that this is risky. And all of a sudden you're hightailing it back towards your own net. It's hard to track a runner, track the ball, track the cross while you're facing your own goal, not give up an own goal. I don't blame any of the defense for that. Like it was a very, very poor ball from Ollie Watkins. And you tally that up with another back-to-back weeks with a late miss skied over that should at least be put on frame that could ice the game. Thankfully, this one didn't cost us 2 points the way the Brighton one did.
Right.
But I keep seeing there are two camps on Twitter amongst the Villarati. There is the Ollie Watkins should never start again, and Duran needs to be our starting striker. There are the ones who will put Ollie Watkins' goal and assist per minute contributions on there and say everything is fine. People are making a big deal out of nothing. And I think you and I fit somewhere in the middle. As you've said repeatedly, two good strikers are better than one. It is good to have options. Mm-hmm. We've also acknowledged the fact that Ollie seems to be a bit soft mentally. In how he's dealing with the competition. And so there is room for both of these guys to start. It's on Unai Emery, the manager, to get the best out of both of them. Mm-hmm. We're just really not seeing the best out of Ollie Watkins right now. And so I think you and I both feel like if you're talking about guys earning their place, we can't keep giving him a place based on his performance last year. And I don't care what the goals per minute say. I know what my eyes are seeing with the opportunities that he's spurning, the opportunities that he's missing, and the ones that the guy behind him, now in front of him, in my mind, is making. And it seems an easy decision.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is I understand that he has as many or near as many goal contributions as he did last year at this point, right? That I get it. The difference is like you're seeing the misses. Like my problem with it is that he should have more based on purely based on the opportunities he's getting. And right. You talked about the one against Brighton and this one against Leicester. At least put those on frame, man. Like, make the keeper do something. Don't put it into the, back of the Holt. That's crazy. That shot that, again, I'm not saying that it had to go in. It probably should have, but it had to be on frame, and instead it's 15 feet over the goal. Like that, it's at this point to me that clearly is a confidence issue, because we know he's able. Like that was even a situation where he doesn't have time to think. He is purely reacting, and that's usually when he finishes at his best, right? When he's not having to think about how he's going to set the shot up. This is just get a toe to it and put it in the right spot, and it's probably a goal. And instead, he absolutely skies it, and it's nowhere close from the minute it hits his foot, or the second it hits his foot, I should say. So that's the problem. It's not that he is not goal involved, because he still is. It's just that he's got these opportunities on a platter, and he is not finishing them. And we are not in a position where we can afford that right now. We need goals because we're shipping a lot of goals. So we need to score a lot of goals, and that puts the team in a bad spot. Luckily, this time around, it did not cost us any additional points, but it's frustrating to watch. And I really want him to turn it around, because if he can get going, then we're talking about potentially being in that top 4 spot where we're looking, at another run at Champions League. That right now, not solely him, but he is part of the difference now between why we're here and not here in the table. And for those on audio, I'm making lines with my fingers there. So he's the reason why we're down a little in the table versus near the top.
So interesting that you say that. And I was going to bring this in as a surprise cold water, but I'll just ask you about it now. Jacob Tanswell said, I forget how he put it exactly, but like the gist was Villa are 4 points off of the top four, and Unai Emery has gotten there with attacking players, bar Duran, that have largely been out of form, low on confidence, low on production. And so he said that's actually pretty remarkable because ultimately it'll come around. And I read that, and at first I had my first thought of, yeah, you know what? Like that is pretty good. We're due for a run. Like things are going to be great. The other side of my brain though said, we're now over halfway through a season, 20 matches into the season. Why are so many attacking players for 20 games out of form, low on confidence, don't really know they know what they're doing? And so is it actually a benefit to Emery, or does that actually raise questions about Emery and his management of the system and the players?
I hate to take a middle answer here, but I think it can be both. It is curious that so many guys are struggling, but some of it is, I think, like John Duran is clearly not struggling, right? Morgan Rogers has had a stretch of bad games here and there, but by and large, he's been mostly pretty good. The other guys are the question marks, and like Ollie Watkins, like he's always done when he's scored pretty much in bunches. But then now he's gone and hasn't scored from open play since November something. You said November
early November. Yeah.
But so like you can't have that. I mean, like that. So it is worth wondering why. Is it Emery, or is it the players, or is it a combination of both? And I think the answer is probably somewhere in the middle. If we're being realistic about it, because I don't think 100% of blame ever lies on one single person or group of people. Like I've said before, given the struggles we've seen this season and where we are now in the table, I trust the manager to get it figured out. I'm running out of time. He's running out of time because we're 20 games in now, but I have nothing like in the history that he's been here, the couple of years he's been here, I have nothing but faith in what he can do, because he's taken worse teams than this one and brought them to where we need them to be. So I expect to climb, and I expect to be in the European places, if not Champions League, but I expect to be in the European places when the season ends.
Well, very, very fair take. To elaborate on that, or to build upon that, one of the other attacking players who had largely been out of form. Let's talk about my man Leon Bailey in that goal.
So I thought Leon Bailey had a decent game. I saw a few folks on Twitter bemoaning the fact that outside of that goal, he wasn't good. But I don't agree with that. I thought he played very well. I thought he was, like you pointed out earlier in the podcast, I thought he was largely double and triple team for most of the game. And they were forcing the ball away from him. So again, credit to Leicester on that. But that passage of play with Maatsen coming on as a sub worked, sub impact. I mean, it doesn't wash away everything that's happened this season, but it did.
No, but it was a substitution that worked. And I don't, as good as I'm not going to say it in French, French has been this year, I don't think he creates that play the way that Ian Maatsen does. That is something that only Ian Maatsen can do off the left back spot.
Maatsen makes a great play, very high pressure, way up the pitch, makes a great play to take the ball. And the run from Maatsen and the corresponding run from Bailey from the other side was really where you see Leon Bailey's skill and goal ability to me, because he read that immediately and started cutting toward the near post from the ball, so that he was much closer than the right wing. When the ball came into him, he was pretty well dead center of the goal. If the mind memory I have going right now
I think he was closer to their right post, to be honest with you.
So yeah, he came all the way from the right wing across the face of goal to make the pass from Maatsen shorter and the angle tougher for the keeper to cover. So it was from Maatsen to Bailey. Everything in that passage of play for me was just a beautiful piece of football.
It was also great layoff from Jacob Ramsey, who otherwise honestly didn't really have a great game, gave the ball away a lot, but that was a very intelligent touch and layback to Maatsen. So credit to him for that. And yeah, you saw how much it meant to Leon. I'm with you. I think people are making it was funny. We had that text exchange, right? Where you sent me I think that other than one misplayed cross, Leon Bailey has played pretty well, and that was midway through the first half. And he had been double triple teamed, but he had created a few opportunities. He had gotten that low cross from Matty Cash off that almost created an opportunity, and then immediately he played like 3 or 4 bad balls in a row. And I texted you right back that you jinxed him. And I feel like people are making, again, because of narratives, people were making more of those 3 bad plays than the 3 good plays that preceded them and the 3 good plays that came after them, and aren't really thinking about the context of the double and triple team and what it takes to create out of that anything at all. So self-confirmation bias, right? People believe a certain thing about Leon Bailey in the season that he's having, and so they're just looking for the evidence to kind of keep supporting that thought, that belief. But you saw how much it meant to him. It's a guy who you have rightly praised for his leadership qualities, has never made a stink about being on the bench when he hasn't performed well this year. You've heard nothing out of him or his camp that he's trying to leave because he lost his starting spot or anything like that. He works hard, and competition makes him better. So really happy for him. I hopefully between Brighton and now ultimately getting the goal, this kind of spurs him on forward, and we just keep getting more out of him and out of Ian Maatsen in that respect. And then last 10-15 minutes, Villa really holding on. We already talked about actually the second opportunity that Leon Bailey created where he almost snuck that in the near post, instead crashed off the bar and Ollie shoots it over. But I don't love the way that we needed to sit back and hold on and give up some decent opportunities to a team that's sitting 19th.
Yeah, it's I think that's the most frustrating thing, and it's been constant throughout this entire season. The inability to close games out, and really, like, that game should have been over in a couple of points, but definitely Ollie Watkins' miss was the biggest and most obvious. And I don't like being in the position, just like you said, of having to hold on to your butts against a team in relegation places, because that's not, like, we are better than that, and we should still be taking the game to them. I know that they're at that point probably flinging lots of players forward, and you have to defend, obviously, in some way, but you have to find a way to collect yourselves and organize and finish the game off, even if that means choking it out and just passing the ball around, because you're better than they are. And I think to me, maybe it goes a little bit back to confidence, because you have to believe we are Aston Villa, they are Leicester City. We can beat this. All we have to do is play our best, or play our game, and we will win. And I don't think that belief is necessarily coursing through the team right now.
Yeah, and there was one opportunity where we did what you're supposed to in that situation, and that was the 86th minute. I'll give him credit for it. Ollie Watkins, dude draped all over his back, shakes him off, tries to get tackled again, fights through the second challenge, and ultimately plays Buendia through, who shouldn't necessarily score, but should get it on frame.
That's another
Like
one. Yep.
that's what you expect a team that's in the Champions League places against a team in the relegation zone to do, is to find that out ball, to beat the press, to beat those men flying forward and punish them for it and put
Yep.
put the game to bed. Ollie
Yep.
Watkins did his job. In that moment, just the rest of the team did not. So that's certainly something that we're going to need to keep an eye on. But if we're moving towards good points and bad points, we didn't give up a goal in the last 15, so we didn't extend that awful record that we're on. I, however, am still considering this us conceding on first shot on target.
Technically, a second shot on goal.
On
Technically,
first shot on target.
but only
I
in
know,
a very technical
but
sense is it not the first attempt. But yeah, it was bad. It was bad.
all right. Sorry if your video just skipped there. Dealing with some internet issues. Not sure whose side, Chris. But we'll deal with that. We can blame Bridge. She's probably streaming on 5 different devices, like the millennial that she is. Anyway, as we were saying, technically didn't concede on the first shot on target, although I'm still considering it the first opportunity. But the only other good point that I want to cover that we hadn't really talked about yet was nice to see Emi Buendia. I think that this was a game that was calling out for him. As you texted me in the lead up, you actually would have been upset to see him start. We said what we got from Ross Barkley driving at the defense. I think we were missing it a little bit from Morgan Rogers. John Duran, obviously, with his pace to carry at guys. Jacob Ramsey not really being on form. It was a good opportunity for Emi Buendia to do what he does best, which is find those little pockets of space, play some passes, maneuver, and ultimately break a team down that was very organized, very compact, and very resolute. You need that sort of creativity, I think, from someone in the middle of the park, and we didn't necessarily have it until he came on. So nice to see him play a role. I don't necessarily know what his role is going to be on this team moving forward, but if this is it, I think he can be a useful depth piece for us.
And I mean, you can use them in cups and things like that. I mean, we still have the FA Cup and that to look forward to coming up. So he's still got a role, and he's just such a creative player that I would love to find spots for him to work.
Completely agree. Any other good points, or should we jump to bad
I
points?
think we've got everything.
Okay.
On these points.
I actually don't really have much else from what we already discussed between the injuries, Tyrone Mings' offensive inability, Ali first opportunity. Anything else that you really want to add?
I don't think so. Everything else, we talked about Jacob Ramsey struggling. He really had a tough go, but I'll just mention that again because we kind of mentioned that in passing. When he came on, he was a turnover machine in the middle of the park. So that can't happen. I know he hasn't played regularly, but we're going to need him now. So he's got to get going.
He's got to be the starting left mid winger at this point,
I mean,
right?
who else do we have at this point? If you say Louis Berry, I will shoot you.
God, no, just no, don't. Everybody, stop. I understand he's a local kid. He's been doing it at League One.
For half
League One for half a season. We just brought Jaden Philogene back, who did it in the championship for a whole season. And everybody's talking about how he can't contribute and needs to get sent out on loan. Like, why would Louis Berry be different? I just don't. Listen, if we want to give him a championship loan for the rest of the season to see if he kind of does the same thing, and then ultimately we give him a shot at early next year, sure. But to think he's going to come in and do a job in this team trying to fight for the Champions League, jumping from League One to the Champions League, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, stop it.
And he's little. I mean, he's little. I understand that there are players that excel when they're that small, but that's few and far between.
I do wonder if his value is highest right now to a
Oh,
championship club. I don't know if we get more money than we do right now.
Yeah. I'd sell him.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Anyway, let's jump ahead to the larger impact on the season. And we are now 8th. Thank you, Ed Sheeran and Ipswich. We love the shape of you. Thank you for drawing Fulham and keeping us up there.
Maybe should have won. Maybe should have won.
Probably 2 penalties. Yeah.
Yeah.
How often do you see a team give up 2 penalties in a game? Anyway.
Not very often, but yeah.
Well, that's why they're 18th, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think the larger implication on the season that we really should be talking about is the fact that, again, not a really convincing win.
Right.
Against a team that has been bad, very bad. We talked about them getting outscored 12-1 in their previous 4 games. Awful Man City beat them 2-0. Looked pretty comfortable doing it. Another not really convincing win against a team that if we're gonna compete for 4th again, we really should be putting to the sword, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I agree that's all true. But a result is a result. And that's 10 unbeaten in the Premier League. Only Arsenal, I think, are currently on a longer streak than that. So, and that's 6 wins and 4 draws, I think, for Villa.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. Look, I obviously I love not losing at home, right? I have a hefty pinch of salt that I want to sprinkle on this because I saw the way that some people were portraying this. Only Arsenal on a longer streak. We are tied for the joint most home points in the league, best record with Brentford and Liverpool. And like, that's great. Liverpool has played 2 fewer games at home than us. Brentford 1 fewer. There are a lot of teams. We played 11 at home. There are a lot of teams beneath us that have played 9 and 10 that can jump us if they win or even draw a couple of those home games. So like we talk about joint best home record, and yes, better to have points on the board than not. But when all things are equal, 11 matches, when everyone's played 11 home matches, we could really be 7th or 8th in home record again as well. So like, let's pump the brakes like everybody has played 19 home matches and we're like joint top.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
No, I'm with you there. I'm just saying 10 unbeaten at home. I'll take that streak anytime. You know, like I said, a result is a result. Even when it doesn't look good, it still counts on the right place in the table. So
that's right.
There are things to build on. And like I said earlier, I think if Watkins gets going, we'll be in much better shape.
Fair. Yeah. And next league match, we get Duran back. He won't be available for West Ham, but we'll get that competition. Hopefully a few more goals there. But it is, I'll say it again, for me, it's still sorting out the defense more than it is the attack.
Yeah.
All right. So 1 cold water today. And it is one that I actually saw right before we hopped on. So Chris and I do not know each other's reactions to this. We usually don't, but like this one, we really do not. And the take was that I saw on Twitter, our recruitment in the summer isn't talked about enough. We wasted 85 million on 2 players who are sat on the bench today while we field a team from 2021. And this was something that I think you probably saw as well. Like everybody was posting the fact that like 7 or 8 of the starters actually came from the Dean Smith era. That
it was 9 of 11.
9 of 11? That sounds right.
9 of 11 were under Gerrard. So very few Unai Emery added players in the
and I think the ones that were under Gerrard were bought during Dean Smith.
Yeah.
Ross Barkley might be the one that, I mean, kind of was,
and even still, though, he was brought in, by Unai Emery again. So, like, you do have to give him credit for that. You can't be like, well, we've had him once before, so this doesn't count. That's all.
But anyway,
yeah.
Are you pouring cold water on that take?
I am pouring some cold water on that take, and I have 2 reasons why. Number one of those players that was sat on the bench was goal involved, and really is a big reason why Villa got that second goal. Number 2, this idea that every single player that you bring in has to have an impact in every single game is silly. And I thought Onana would have been the right move to play in the midfield, like I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks now. I love that midfield of Kamara and Onana together, but the boss doesn't like it in some matches. That's his prerogative. That he's won a whole hell of a lot more football matches than I have. But so I understand the frustration there, but like, let's not act like Onana hasn't been very good in a lot of games this season. He's had some struggles too, adjusting to the system and fitting in. But let's not act like he's just total trash and he's been sitting on the bench and wasting away for nothing. That's silly and short-sighted. So, like, what we're doing now as a recruitment philosophy, it appears to me, is specifically targeting certain players for the long haul. None of these guys outside of Ross Barkley, who was brought back specifically to be an experienced player in the midfield, are very old. Most of these guys are extremely young. I mean, Onana's like 23, 24,
He's
So
younger than Kamara, that's for sure. I know that.
What's that?
He's younger than Kamara
Yeah.
by at least a
I
year.
mean, so it's just like Emery's building a long-term, Emery and Monchi and the rest of the staff are building a long-term project here. It's not just about buying a player for right now, this season, impact every single game. Like, it's depth, it's long-term depth, it's a long-term plan, and I can appreciate that. You just cannot be so reactionary game in and game out.
So I too am pouring a little bit of cold water on this take. I take all points and I agree with them. But at the same time, I do understand the frustration because Onana scored in the first couple games, hasn't necessarily scored since September. And we did see this with Moussa Diaby last year as well, right? Started hot, middle of the season, really cratered as he wasn't really playing like the instinctual way that he did when he came over, was trying to learn the system, like all that kind of stuff. And he was in and out of the squad. And then he started to pick up towards the end of the season again. And I think we'll probably see a similar trajectory with Onana. Why he didn't play yesterday, we covered this in the pre-match. I think Emery's probably looking at that, a team in 19th, and thinking that a midfield two of Onana and Kamara is too defensive. He wants to be on the front foot a little bit more. And we've talked about how offensive he is as a manager. So it makes sense why he wouldn't necessarily come on yesterday. And Brighton, he was brought on to kind of shore things up and didn't really do it, right? We conceded. So, that's why you might not trust him necessarily again to come in 15 minutes in a game that you really have to win. That being said, I think we'll see the two of them in a lot of our more in our games against more attack-minded teams now, right? We did it against City. We'll probably do it against Liverpool, Arsenal, like teams of that sort to really shore up that defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The frustration that I understand with the 85 million is that this is coming on the tails of Unai Emery saying again yesterday that if we don't qualify for Champions League, we're going to need to sell other big players. And the speculation is already rampant that it's going to be Morgan Rogers, that it's going to be John Duran, that it's going to be Abubakar Kamara, who all cost nothing, are essentially pure profit with what they're ultimately going to bring in.
Mm.
And so the fan frustration is probably, well, we spent 85 million on these two guys that are forcing us to sell one or two of three players that are really contributing starting that we know can do it. And so if we didn't buy them, we keep these guys. And it doesn't necessarily work that way, but like I understand the thought process. This team needed depth this year to compete in the Champions League. Now, we paid 50 million for Onana. Could you get a different player from the continent for 20 million? Maybe. I don't have any names off the top of my head. If the person who wrote this tweet has has some idea of where you would rather spend that 85 million to give us the depth that could contribute, then I'm all ears for it. But so it's balancing that need for depth and knowing that we're going to spend in the January window and probably push ourselves closer to PSR breach versus this idea of it feels like a waste of money if these guys aren't necessarily contributing right away. And to your point, these are very young guys. These are built for the future. We're going to want to move Luka Dean on and ultimately bring a new left back through. And Luka Dean is amazing. I don't want to lose Luka Dean, but he's 30, right? Like he's on the downswing. He's never going to be worth more than he is right now. And we've got one of the hottest young 22, 23-year-old left backs coming through. So there needs to be a passing of the torch to some of these guys at some point. Who knows if Ross Barkley, we're going to get another year out of him or not. And then Onana's playing more. So to your point, there is a look to the future, and that's why I pour some cold water on this. But I only pour a little because like I understand right now the frustration when you hear the other side coming out of the club of like these guys that we really love that are actually doing it for us might need to go to keep these guys that aren't.
I'll say it's a 0% chance that it's Durant and Rodgers. That's not happening. They're building the club around those two, I think.
Kamara with what he's done this year.
Yeah.
We're already talking about a new deal for him. Now, maybe it's a huge out clause in the summer.
Yeah.
I think those three guys are where we're building.
Yeah, I agree with you. But anyway, so I think you and I both have similar thoughts. You were probably a little more eloquent on the other side of it because I don't look at that as much. I worry way less about PSR than everyone else. We'll get there and figure it out.
We've got people to manage it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And that also may or may not be a topic for Tuesday. So
nice tease.
We'll close it out here. Everybody pay attention to your feeds for Tuesday. We'll drop it again. Big interview coming. And then obviously we have West Ham on Friday in the FA Cup. We're kicking off the FA Cup weekend. So probably match preview will come out Wednesday evening, Thursday morning. So stay tuned to your feeds for that as well. But that's it for Leicester. Chris, what?
I said busy week.
Busy week for us. Busy week for the pod before I head to Japan. So it's all fun. I can't wait to chat on Tuesday, Chris. It's going to be a good one. Anything else from you?
No, I'm all good. Just up the villa.
Up the villa. Hi, Mom and Dad.